and he leads on the CAM service. So this is a great honor for us to have someone who's leading the CAMS team to be speaking at our event. Dr. Ferreira will be giving us a presentation, and there will be a chance for us to ask questions as well. Our second speakers, I don't know if they have arrived yet. They are still on their way, so when they do come, I'll introduce you to them. They're Claire Sarton and Leanne Naylor from Surrey and Borders Partnership. They will be talking about their specific project, which is the Mindful Service, that seeks to promote engagement of hard-to-reach young people. So everything about today is relevant to this topic. And last but not the least, I'd like to introduce you to the SMEF team. There's Christina Koch, our project coordinator, and everyone in this room, especially the stallholders, must be aware of Christina's emails. And then we have Eddington Pendura at the back of the room. Eddington is our comms officer. And we have Sulochana Chetri, who is our Gurkha project officer. Now, Eddington, Christina, Sulochana, and I are here. If anyone needs anything, please speak to us. Okay, now I missed out. How could I do that? Judy Linney, our trustee. Now, Judy is an ex-director of public health. She's been on the SMEF trustee board ever since its inception. Judy is passionate about mental health and young people's issues, and it's our great privilege to have her here today. Now I can hand over to Kausar. Kausar will tell you about Surrey Faith Links. Okay? So here we go. If I can. Eddington, I don't know.
Good evening, everyone. I think most of you will probably know me as the Imam's wife. So I'm married to Imam Hashmi, who's the Imam at our local mosque, Sharjah Mosque, Woking. But for the rest of you, you probably know me as Faith Links Advisor. And much of our community don't actually know what sort of work I do. So this is a good opportunity for me as well to share some of the work that I do. So Surrey Faith Links is a project which is funded by Surrey County Council, and it's basically linking in with the faith communities across the county. I'll let you read that because it's quite long. I'm bothered. Next one. When you're using other people's equipment, you don't always quite know how it's going to work. We should have done a rehearsal. So some of the work that I do is organising interfaith events. Have any of you heard of Woking People of Faith? Come on, hands up. I'm sure quite a few of you have. Yeah, good. So that's your local interfaith forum. But across the county, we have various interfaith forums. We have Ambridge Multi-Faith Forum, a new one being set up in Epsom, Surrey Heath Faith Forum, Guildford and Godalming Interfaith Forum, and a few others as well. And we have activities all across the county. So if you're interested, please do get in touch with me later. You should have a leaflet in front of you with more detail about the work that I do. I do a monthly newsletter that informs you about upcoming events, information for faith communities, and we understand there's a link between minority groups and faith communities, hence why we're doing this event together. So if you're interested in getting involved, then please do contact me about that. I also link up with other voluntary organisations. So VCFS stands for Voluntary Community Faith Sector. And that just basically means what you might have called previously the third sector will be much more valuable than that now. So we Voluntary Community Faith Sector. So I link up with them and the local authorities. So our local authority here is Woking Borough Council, so I do a lot of work with them as well. And we organise visits to places of worship. So we've been to like the Napil Buddhist Temple. Obviously, there's a lot of interest around Sharjah Mosque itself, so then we arrange visits there to some churches and various other places of worship. And the idea is really to bridge the gap between communities. Now, especially more than ever, it's so important that we engage with one another. So the work of Study Faith Links is key really to this, for communities to get back to basics and just at a human level have those conversations. I also support and develop interfaith forums across Surrey, which I've already mentioned. So at the moment, Epsom and Ewell is one of those that are about to come about very soon. We've just set up the constitution. I've talked to some people at the back who are interested in that, so hopefully that'll happen. If you're from an area that doesn't have an interfaith forum and you'd like to set something up, I'm the person to contact. But not until after I return from maternity now. So next year sometime, make a note of my number. So thank you for that. I won't keep you because today's not about Study Faith Links, it's about mental health awareness. But if you do want to subscribe to the newsletter, it's a free newsletter. It's sent out every month at the beginning of the month electronically, but if you want a printout, I'm happy to post it out to you as well. So make a note of my details. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you. Thanks, Kausar. And now, just a little bit about SMEF, if I can find it.
Yeah.
Mm.
You just click on that.
Your gear is falling.
Okay.
It's still
Just
working.
hold it. Yeah, maybe
Still
just
working, maybe that's better. Okay, so a little bit about SMEF now. The context, Surrey has a minority ethnic population of over 17%, so that's a sizable amount of people. And SMEF is the only organization that talks about ethnicity. So Surrey Faith Links does a lot of work with ethnic minority communities, but SMEF encompasses a whole range of different ethnic groups. We have 40 registered members of SMEF, and they range from Albanian, African, Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Hungarian, Chinese, Sri Lankan, Nepali. Yes, so we represent a whole range of different communities. We are an independent community organization. We have charity and company status, and we have 40 members, as I've said before. SMEF's ethos is to engage, educate, and empower local people to find solutions to the common economic and social problems they face living in Britain today. So SMEF is an issue-based organization. We help and support ethnic minority communities to articulate a common voice on issues that they face. Our project is funded by the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, and the title of our project, interestingly, is called Active Communities. And what we perceive as an active community is a community that's confident, a community that has the right information to interact on several different levels, at a local level, at a national level, and as individuals and families. So we do that in a number of ways. Our comms officer, Eddington Pendura, has recently started work with us, and he is building on our membership. SMEF sincerely believes that every single individual has something to contribute to the general good of all. So we describe ourselves, because of the different ethnicities we embrace, we describe SMEF as a neutral space in the sense that we don't talk about one particular culture or one particular religion. We encompass a range of cultures, a range of religions, a range genders across the board. And we have the confidence, I think, to talk about those really difficult issues: domestic abuse, mental illness, drug and alcohol problems, how and where to go for help, and how to reach out to someone in need. What we want to stress is that as difficult as these social problems are, they're unfortunately common to all of us. When we get together in a safe space, in a common space, it's not about any one community having these issues. It's all of us addressing these really difficult issues. So mental health is one of them, and this mental health event that we are holding today reinforces that. So we live in a really complex, difficult world, and as parents, our children are faced with quite a difficult environment out there, which we might not be completely aware of. So family breakdown is widespread. There is so much pressure on young people to have access to money, to have the perfect body and lifestyle. The peer pressure on our children is huge. 24-hour social networking and what young people can access from a really young age have a negative impact, could have a possible negative impact on the mental health and well-being of a child. So as parents, we have this huge responsibility. Not only do we have to clothe and feed and look after our children, but we need to be aware. In this day and age, we need to be aware of what our children face when they go out there. So body image is a source of much distress for many young people. Bullying on and offline is rife. Increasing sexual pressures and early sexualization throw young people into an adult world they don't understand. Television, film, the media, these influence us and our children in a huge way. Violence is rife. We live, unfortunately, in a world that there's so many wars being fought. You just have to turn your television on and there's one ghastly bit of news after the other. So the fear of crime is a constant source of distress for thousands of young people. Schools, they are getting more and more like exam factories. There's a huge pressure on our children to perform, to excel, and these all go towards making a potential space or, potentially our young kids have a lot that we need to support them with. Okay. So what would we consider good mental health for our children? The capacity to enter into and sustain mutually satisfying personal relationships. So if a child is brought up in a loving home environment where they're not confused by different signals coming from their parents, then the chances of sustaining and building mutually satisfying relationships is high. An ability to play and learn appropriately for their age and intellectual level, a developing moral sense of right and wrong, the capacity to cope with a degree of psychological distress, and a clear sense of identity and self-worth. These are all what makes for good mental health. Now, I take you back to our agenda. Our keynote speaker, Dr. Phil, will tell us about the CAMS program. I think it's a new one, the Mindsight that's being introduced in Surrey. And then we have Leanne Naylor, who will tell us about the mindful service. And then we have a workshop. And the workshop is a really, I hope is a really interesting bit for all of us. We will go through some common mental illnesses that affect children. So ADHD, addictions, anxiety and depression, eating disorders and self-harm. I now hand over to Phil.
Thank you.
You might have a pocket you can put it into.
I'll try and find a pocket. Whilst I do this, good evening everyone. Some familiar faces, some old friends and hopefully some new friends by the end of today. I'm really glad to have been invited to come here because actually for me, as the senior clinician for CAMS,
Is it your thing?
I'll let them sort that out.
Oh, sorry, thanks, Keith.
There are two main issues. One is around access to services, which hopefully, that's not my presentation.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
That's my colleague's presentation, if you've got the other one. That's it. One of the major barriers is around access to services, and hopefully by the end of the next 15 minutes, I'll give you an oversight of how we're really trying to transform mental health services. And then the other bit, from my perspective, is around the sort of stigma that can actually be attached to mental illness, which means that whether you're in a faith group or not, whether you're in an ethnic minority or not, actually there are often barriers within families, within schools, if you're an adult, within workplace settings for accessing mental health provision. So it's a double-edged sword, but hopefully I'll give you an overview of how we're trying to really do the best we can for young people. So, I live in Surrey. It's a hot topic of personal interest to me because I've got 2 young children, and what I want as a father, let alone as a clinician, is to make sure we've got really good services that are accessible and meet the needs of people wherever they are and as early as possible. And part of our mission statement, part of our trust mission statement is about linking up with mind and body, because we see the two as interrelated and not as disparate, separate things, but also we're all part of communities in some of the ways that I've described. And we've got a vision and values. So vision and values, essentially, we want people at whatever stage of life to have a better life. Otherwise, what's the point in me being involved in healthcare? And what's the point for many of us who support young people and older people doing the work that we do? Our new service is actually extremely innovative, because what we've tried to do and what we are doing is providing a menu of services, irrespective of severity, with 1 or 2 exceptions, which we're hoping to iron out, without any barriers either to do with illness or age, and trying to make sure that the range of provision is delivered as early as possible. So this well-being and resilience services, as well as, at the other end of the spectrum, in crisis services. And the mistake that many services have made up till now is to focus just on crisis services, whereas our model is, yes, attending to that, but trying to make sure that we've got our specialist, our targeted, and our wellbeing and resilience services. Now, luckily, our commissioners have given us more money to do all of this, but alongside that, they're expecting us to do an awful lot more work, which is fine by me. But how do we do it? Again, we do it by having traditional type CAM services, but then also having a range of voluntary sector, private sector, statutory, non-statutory, charity, non-charity agencies be part of the broadened menu, the broadened opportunities that we have for delivering service, both face-to-face in traditional type settings, but also, if need be, prior to any referral into CAMS or irrespective of any referral into CAMS. So for example, couth.com, that is a resource that is available to every single young person over the age of 10 in Surrey, whether or not you've had a referral or need a referral into CAMS. And the good thing about it is it's evidence-based, it's quality assured, and if we need to step up care into more traditional type services, we can do. But we're also linking in with youth support services and education. So for example, a lot of the work that I lead on in terms of quality assurance and with colleagues is making sure that we do training and intervention in schools and that we deliver counselling, for example, through the ICON charity at schools, so that young people don't have to come out of school to get the help they need, and parents don't have to come out of work to take them to the appointments. So there's a whole menu there. I can expand later if needed. This is the key slide, okay? This is what is different now compared to before, with one caveat. I've always said that nothing will ever be perfect, but what we've committed to is making sure that as this service rolls out and develops and refines itself over the next 3 to 5 years, we will be building on this. So, a single point of referral, one telephone number, one portal, one contact address that anybody in Surrey can make a referral to. Now, currently, we don't allow referrals from parents. It has to be from a professional. But one of the things I'm very proud of is actually I've been able to get sign-off that essentially, if anybody from the faith sector, non-faith sector, a youth worker, a teacher, anybody, as well as traditional means of referral like GPs, teachers, etc., all those mechanisms for referring into our service is possible through that contact detail. And that there'll be no wrong door. So screening happens, an assessment is offered, hopefully in a way that's convenient for you, in a location that's convenient for you. And if treatment is then needed, that'll happen. So, no bouncing of referrals between providers, no letters back to GP saying, sorry, you can't come into our service. So one of the key bits of my work is making sure there are no unintended gaps in services. So I spend a lot of my time working with paediatricians, other providers in Surrey to make sure that we try and work as seamlessly as possible, because we know this doesn't always happen, yeah, even with the best will in the world. Lower threshold criteria, extended hours of operating, talked about the way in which we deliver services. And one of the things that I've got to evidence is people like me are ridiculously expensive. So we're publicly financed. So we've got to make sure, I've got to make sure that all my colleagues are working effectively. So making sure that young people are seen and there's throughput, but also that it's a high quality service so that everybody is trained appropriately, has the right qualifications, etc., etc. So clinic scheduling is part of that, making sure that people are seen, effectively. And then we've got a more managed model of care, so we're linking all our interventions to evidence-based outcomes. Because in a previous life, I was an adult psychotherapist, and one of the charges that was often levelled against adult psychotherapy, and I was training to be a psychoanalyst, I think a bit unfairly, is, what's the evidence that what you do does any good? So actually, we've got to provide the evidence because we're publicly funded. We need to assure everyone that what we're doing stands a good chance and will hopefully make our users better. We've got a range of pathways, which I won't go into too much at this point, new pathways, and most other pathways are going to be enhanced and have been enhanced. And also we're working with our colleagues, CAMS Youth Advisors. CAMS Youth Advisors, I strongly suggest you go and see Danielle and others, who I think I saw earlier, at the stand, because actually they provide a range of functions for us. They help us, people like me, make sure that the services that we deliver are the sort of services that young people want to access. They also help us make sure that the environments in which we see people are friendly and warm and welcoming. They also provide peer mentoring support and drop-in groups. Brilliant. Many services do not take into account the views and wishes of service users and their families. And also we've got an employment pathway that we're mobilising. I'm not going to go through this. This is our one-stop sort of referral hub. We receive referrals, we process them, we track what happens to them, we put referrals into the relevant pathways so that treatment and care can happen. And this is just really expanding on some of the resources that we've got. So Couth Online I've spoken about, primary mental health do a lot of the work into schools, the counselling I've spoken about. I'm doing a lot of work with social care and education around the early help offer and making sure that we're integrated with that. Advice lines. CYP IACT is the framework within which we do and we monitor outcomes. So it's a national driver. Targeted services, so primary mental health, looked after children, adopted children, care leavers, Extended hope and hope, you may well have heard, and we always try to prevent this, that accessing beds, mental health beds, is a nightmare because of the way it's commissioned and the numbers of beds available. Our Hope service do a sterling job in trying to prevent hospital admissions wherever possible, and they do that primarily by offering and delivering, enhanced interventions at home, at school, wherever it may be, also with the backup of a day programme if needed. And then we've got sexual trauma services, parent infant mental health services, and the behaviour pathway is for autism, ADHD. And one of my roles, as well as working with children, is I work with adults in the adult ADHD service, and I take a particular lead in making sure the transition across that 18 age barrier that traditionally can be a bit of a pit into which people fall into, hopefully is minimised where possible. These are our specialist services, so community CAMS, sort of old style traditional CAMS, learning disability, eating disorders, mindful, which we'll hear about in a minute. And these are our crisis services. So one of my aims and one of my tasks, even today I was in meetings where we're really trying to build on making sure that ideally we reduce the number of people that have to go into A&E, and if they are in A&E, that they stay there for as short a time as possible, and where possible they don't need to go onto a paediatric bed, because hopefully there's a service out in the community that can meet their need better. That won't always happen, and it's not always what is actually needed, especially where you've got eating disorders and complex eating disorders with low weight. But we really want to make sure that people remain in their communities. And we're extending the safe haven model, so a cafe model that we piloted in our adult services and has received lots of media attention and positive feedback. We are now actually rolling that out in relation to children's services. So our first young people's safe haven cafe, so it's a cafe that operates in the evening where you can come for a tea, for a coffee, you can talk with a trained professional about any ongoing concerns, and that can either be sufficient or stepped up as needed. That's operating in Epsom. We're planning to roll it out across the county. That's the details. Thank you.
We let Claire do her presentation and then we can take questions at the end.
Yep.
So if you have questions for Dr. Phil, please hang on. We'll take them after Claire has done her presentation. Claire is from, Claire, can you tell us about, you tell us about the mindful service.
Hi there, my name is Claire from the Mindful Service. I'm just going to give you a very brief background and some information about what we are and what we do.
Should be alright.
What did you need?
No,
Yeah, you need to just press it forward.
right, okay. Sorry. So the Mindful Service sits within the specialist portfolio of the Children's and Young Person Services for Surrey Board of Partnership, and it was created to promote engagement of hard to reach and hard to engage young people who are aged from 16 to 25 with emerging to moderate mental health difficulties who are not accessing traditional mental health services for various reasons. This typically would be young people who perhaps didn't meet the criteria for CAMS or for the CMHRS services, who would otherwise maybe fall through the gap. The service is an outreach-based service that is in Chertsey and Redhill. We cover the whole of the county. Okay, so we provide signposting, consultation, assessment, intervention, training and liaison as appropriate for presenting concerns. By signposting, what that means generally is that we would go and assess someone, see what their needs are, and then look at, sorting out a plan of action really, and that might be signposting somewhere like Richmond Fellowship, for example, if they had issues with work and training, or we would help them with their benefits, that kind of thing. So consultation and training is aimed at enhancing the confidence and competences necessary to deliver an intervention provided by others involved in the mental health care of young people. So quite often we will give training to those who work with young people who might possibly have some mental health issues. An example is that I do a drop-in session with the Guildford YMCA on a weekly basis, and the staff there have asked for some additional training and support. And we work alongside and target non-statutory and voluntary services. Another one of our aims is to raise awareness and increase knowledge of mental health needs in young people, to provide training and workshops for staff and young people. We also provide added value not already met by traditional statutory mental health services. We try not to duplicate services already being offered and provided, because that we find if we do that, it's confusing for the young people and for ourselves. Providing a mental health service that's not provided elsewhere for a group of young people who have a high level of need. By high level of need, I just want to differentiate that between sort of a high mental, it's just not necessarily about the mental health needs. It might be that they're complex in that they've got a range of different needs. Prevention of long-term mental health needs of this group. So basically, if you work with someone when they're young, try and nip it in the bud, hopefully that'll prevent it from developing. Partnership agency with mental health focus groups for this age group. We do a lot of work with SEA with young people, promoting mental health for young people as well. Increasing mental health knowledge of staff involved with young people in this age range. Increasing access and patient choice for very vulnerable young people. Due to the recent go live of our new Mindsite Surrey CAM service, as Phil was just saying, having been awarded a contract following tendering last summer, the Mindful service has recently expanded. So it really is quite a developing service. It's still quite small, but whereas it used to be 2 nurses, it's now a Band 7 lead, 1 Band 6 youth mental health nurse, which is myself. We also are looking to appoint another Band 6 in the East team as well. We've got 2 support workers, and we've also got an apprentice as well. This has enabled the service to plan working alongside CAMS and YSS with the GRT. GRT is the Gypsy Romany Traveller community, who are also trying to outreach as well. Gym to be delivered in conjunction with the Recovery College as part of other projects being planned over the next 1 to 3 years. I should explain the Recovery College is a wide variety of training sessions and educational sessions that are provided by people who are expert by experiences, so those who have had experience of mental health issues and emotional issues, and mental health professionals as well. Target needs: young people who are homeless, and that can include rough sleepers, young people who have either drug and or alcohol difficulties, young people in the needs category, and what that means is not in education or training. Young people involved in the criminal justice team, in the criminal justice system, sorry. Okay, so our target services, we work alongside YMCA, the police. I do a weekly drop-in session with Guildford Police. I also do a weekly drop-in with the YMCA. Probation services, I work with the Spelthorne and Guildford. We also have strong links with various night shelters in and around Surrey. Drug and alcohol teams, we're quite closely linked to Catch-22. We do a lot of work, a lot of training with them. And the IOM teams, that's Integrated Offender Management teams, and that's part of the work we do with the police and probation. Young families supported housing projects. We work with a lot of vulnerable young ladies and particularly young mums as well.
Okay.
Our aims to prevent the potential of long-term mental health needs of this group, to work in partnership with other agencies to ensure the mental health needs for this group are addressed, to educate and advise those involved with young people about mental health issues, to increase access and client choice for vulnerable young people. Community outreach-based service which is informal, flexible, accessible and non-stigmatising. Flexibility in venues and meeting times, including out of hours if required. And as Phil says, we've got safe haven cafes and crisis line supports as well. Flexibility in ongoing attempts to engage if appointments are missed. Close collaboration with other services involved in the young person's care. Does anyone have any questions? In that case, I'm done.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, we've got quite a few people. I'll bring the mic to you. And these are questions to Dr. Lay, I think. Yes?
Just a clarification, actually. You mentioned earlier in your presentation that parents can't defer. Is there any particular reason?
It's around trying to make sure that actually somebody in universal services, so services that are available to anybody in the general public, that somebody at that level has at least had a chance to see the young person and meet with the family. So it's the equivalent of, if you wanted to see a cardiologist, I'm stretching it a tiny bit, if you wanted to see a cardiologist, you would go and see a GP first, because actually one reason for the causes could be heart things, but another reason for the cause could be gut things. So that's the main reason.
Right. And I think in my experience as a parent or as a professional, young people with mental health issues, they don't go to anybody else first until it's really worse. And I think parents are the first port of call or the first person for people who will pick up on these issues.
I completely agree. So I'm not saying that parents don't have a role in this at all. All I'm saying is that there used to be a myth, which I've tried my hardest to counter, that the only way you could access services like ours was to go through a GP. Okay? That is not true. What you do need to do is you need to discuss it with a professional that has some experience of dealing with young people and mental health issues. So that could be a school teacher. So even if it was, you go and have a chat with the class teacher hears it. Even better if they're recognising some of the problems themselves, then the class teacher, also incorporating your information, can make that referral. What I've tried really hard to make really clear to my GP colleagues and my education colleagues is what they should not be doing is sort of hearing, let's say, your concerns, or a faith or a voluntary sector leader or a youth worker. What they shouldn't be doing is hearing your concerns and then sending it through a chain of about 4 people to get to somebody like me. It needs to go to somebody, but then directly into us. And the other way, actually, that it's possible to do it, is parents are actually able to ring the one-stop shop